childhood religion and, transitioning to some of a more spiritual path rather than religious, and, going into tarot, and how, I had a child diagnosed with autism, and how, I navigated that and then successfully, homeschooled him, and thank God he's doing wonderful now. And so I explain that up front because nothing irritates me more than picking up a self-help or spiritual book, and you get the sense that the person is just clueless and doesn't have much life experience. For example, a spiritual teacher talking about parenting or children, and they're not even married, let alone they don't have any kids. And so it's like, I see that, and I'm like, oh, come on, don't even think of giving me information about parenting if you don't have personal experience. I mean, that's just how I am.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I made sure right at the beginning, just to lay out some of the things I've been through, to say, okay, just in case you're wondering in your mind, is this lady even qualified to give me possible interpretations on spirituality or parenting or vocation and career. And I also explained that, after I was widowed, how I started my own interior decorating business, and how, I've been an entrepreneur ever since. As an author, I'm kind of an entrepreneur. You have to sell yourself and sell your product, and also, our decks and what have you, and things that have been spin-offs. And so I also explained how I've also been an entrepreneur and with career. And so I have experience in all these areas that I'm giving advice upon. But I go beyond just, the advice sections. I also provide tons of correlations for people, especially helpful for healers. But some things are very unusual and unique to my book, like Disney totems. I provide a Disney totem for every card, and I had someone write to me and say, oh, I can't tell you how much the Disney totem part of Naked Tarot helped me to understand the cards, just that one section, because, Disney is ubiquitous, it is, everywhere. New movies are constantly coming out, Disney and Pixar, now that they bought Star Wars, we have, is that. But I didn't put any Star Wars references in here. I am not a Star Wars fan, so it's mostly Disney and Pixar.
I can honestly say I'm not either. I have never watched one of the movies more than probably 20 minutes.
Oh, so boring. My goodness, I'm a Star Trek girl myself. So high five, fellow non-Star Wars man.
And they're going to come out with another Star Wars movie too.
Oh my gosh,
another one.
Totally tuned though. So boring. I cannot stand it. It's just, Anyway, but Disney movies are fun, I feel, and Disney movies are a really cool shortcut into the archetypes that we live. The princess archetype, the warrior archetype, the hero, the villain, the magician. So many archetypes are all through Disney movies, and many of them, span the 1930s, 40s. I don't know when Snow White came out, but that was one of the earliest. And so, the one lady that wrote to me said that what really helped her was when I said Jiminy Cricket for the Judgment card, because she always thought the Judgment card was a very difficult card to understand. But she said a light bulb went off when I said Jiminy Cricket, because it's like the conscience, let the conscience be your guide, and how Jiminy Cricket served as Pinocchio's, conscience, because, as he was trying to become a real boy, he really didn't have much of a conscience. He didn't have a moral compass to go by, and he was, falling into some dangerous things. And Jiminy Cricket's like, hey, you don't want to do that, you don't want to do that. And then he got into some dire consequences. And so, even though it seems cute, she provides, a Disney totem for each card, just that little small thing could really set off a series of light bulbs for people to help understand what that card means, what it shows up for them, or if they want to use that card consciously for affirmations. Let's say somebody is having a really difficult time. They're between a rock and a hard place morally. Maybe they're getting pressure from their job, their boss to do one thing, but the law says another, or perhaps, a parent's pushing them to do this, but they feel that, that this is the right thing. Well, if you focus on the Judgment card with being mindful of the fact that it can be like a conscious, your conscience and your moral compass, you can focus on that and meditate and say, okay, what do I believe? What is right for me? What is right in the eyes of the law, or what have you? And so, something that small can be very powerful. And so I didn't just provide that. I also provide like animal symbols for each one. So if somebody's really into nature, or they're observer of animals, or they even work with animal totems in their spiritual path. That's another shortcut that can help people. I provide occupations and vocations for every card. And then for the healers, I provide things like flower essences and crystal stones, aromatherapy. And I even have mystical messengers. So there's like a lot of saints and gods and goddesses in there that, kind of manifest in a way that relates to what the card means and what would help remedy, like if there was a challenge with the issues presented in that card. Then a mystical messenger, I also put that in there. So, if somebody wants to call upon a saint or, study, what that saint did or a god or goddess, and they can go ahead and call upon them in their spiritual path or maybe study their life and get some more understanding about how that particular person or mystical messenger navigated that difficulty in their life.
Yeah. Now, a question: how many decks of cards have you generated so far?
Oh, as far as created, my husband and I have only created 2. But I shouldn't say only, because those are like 78 or more images for every deck. And my husband works in a factory, so he has a day job. So he dedicated over 2 years of his life to do the Snowland deck, which was our first deck, and that was he hand cut the wood and gessoed it, and did all the drawings, and then hand painted it in acrylics. And then the most recent one, which came out last fall, is the Coffee Tarot deck, and that was done in watercolor pencils. But that took well over a year as well of dedicated work. And so then we brainstorm every image. So it's a true collaboration. Because I came from it as the tarot expert, he was the artist, and now he's become much more familiar with tarot after working with me for years. But the first thing you have to do is to decide if a tarot deck is viable, a theme. Can we really take every card, 78 cards, and can we actually make a lens for this to make sense and that stays within some of the traditional meanings, but yet be variations on the theme? And so we were going to do a Christmas tarot for the first one, and then my husband's like, that is so narrow to just have Christmas images because everything would be very limited with the imagery. And we got to talk, and I said, well, why don't we have something called Snowland? And that way we can have some Christmas images in it. For example, our 7 mental card or 7 of Swords shows Santa on the rooftop. And usually that's like the sneaky card or trying to get away with something, but it also is a card of strategy and navigating, tricky things. And Santa's, on the roof with this huge bag of toys, and there's a lit window, and there's a shadow, like, oops, and he's got this look on his face like, oh, crap, like someone heard me, and they turned the light on. And so there's a lot of, so there are several Christmas images in that, but we expanded it to include Arctic animals, Nordic mythology, literature that refers to anything that's snow, ice, or frost, like Jack Frost is in there. We have Snowflake Bentley, who was a real-life guy who dedicated his life to photographing snowflakes. And anytime you see those gorgeous pictures of crystalline snowflakes, like black and white ones, those are from Snowflake Bentley. So he's in there. We have Balto in there, the famous sled dog, which the Iditarod is based on, bringing that needed medication to those people suffering from diphtheria in Alaska. And so we have that. We have Charles Dickens in there. We have some Hans Christian Andersen tales, like the Snowdrop. We have the Dog and the Snowman. We have like Tomten. From Germanic mythology. So we have all these cool things there. Aller, who's one of the Nordic gods. So we threw that into Snowland. Then it gave us a wider base in order to create a tarot deck that wasn't just so limited to Christmas. And then the Coffee Tarot, our family and I love coffee, and we always joked, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have a coffee deck? And then we got to seriously, brainstorming it one day on our porch and on a weekend, and I said, do you think we could do this? And we said, okay, what would the Fool card look like? What would, the devil look like? And, of course, the devil that came to our mind was caffeined. Instead of caffeine, caffeined. And it shows this rattlesnake with coffee bean pattern around a mug of coffee, and the handle of the mug looks like handcuffs. And there's these shaking hands that are ready to reach for it, because one of the meanings of the devil card is addiction or bondage or enslavement to something, beyond yourself. And, caffeine addiction, you just have to have that cup. And it doesn't matter that a snake might be biting you or that you might be chained to that drug, you still want your cup of coffee. And so once we started realizing, oh, wow, that's a cool, viable idea, then we ran with it. And so all the majors are in coffee tones. And then the minor arcana, we have a bit of a color coordination going with that, to a point where, like, the material cards are, the earth cards have a lot of green in them, and the swords cards, which we call air, have quite a bit of purple in them. And then aqua for the water cards, and of course the fire cards have a lot of red and orange, so that way it'll help people recognize them a little more easily. And so we actually have 2 full decks, and we just published the Coffee Tarot Companion and the Snowland Companion book that goes with it, and it provides like information on the cards, background. We have some sketches in there of cards that didn't make it, behind the scenes. We have affirmations, writing prompts. I have sections in there for like romance and career and spirituality, and so there's a lot of good stuff in that as well. One thing with my husband and I, we never do anything halfway. We always have to go all out.
Well, it sure sounds like it, Janet. Now, can I ask you a question? I've been having a couple people on my chat asking, how do you use the cards? Because they don't even know how. To be honest with you, I don't either. So why don't you educate my listeners and me?
Sure. Well, actually, there are different ways that you can use the cards. And the way that most people are familiar with tarot is that of a fortune-telling device. And that is trying to find out the future. Because let's face it, most of humanity, we're control freaks. We want to be able to control our destiny. But you find out the more you try to control, the more you realize there's no way you can. And so this is like, for me, the least desirable method of tarot, because I feel that if you become too reliant on tarot cards as a fortune-telling device, meaning, you shuffle and you ask, okay, where's my soulmate? Or when will I meet my soulmate? Or how can I get rich? Or those kind of temporal, materialistic type questions, there's no spiritual growth to that. And also somebody can become spiritually codependent upon that, or upon tarot cards or psychics. There are some people that, will just pay so much money to psychics every single week asking the same questions. And they're basically wanting someone to tell them that they're going to be rich, they're going to be loved, they're going to be married, and they're going to be okay. And nobody can guarantee that. And so that is what tarot is usually known for, is the random shuffling of the cards and interpreting it to answer questions that you have. Now, I believe in asking better questions of the tarot. Like, I don't believe in yes or no, asking the tarot yes or no questions. I believe you want to know yes or no, you flip a coin. I feel tarot is so broad and yet so deep that it can address some very specific questions, but I feel like the best ones to ask are open-ended ones that are more empowering. Like, let's say you're looking for love. Like, how can I prepare my heart for love? We're asking a question like, what needs to be healed in my emotional life so I can welcome love? How will I know love when I see it? Or how can I best love myself? And things like that. And then you shuffle, randomly, and you draw the card, and then you look in a book for the interpretation, or, as I recommended with my first book, Back in Time Tarot, where you can actually create your own meanings for cards. And that way you don't even have to be reliant on a tarot book to hold your hand, which there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I think that you can use, and other tarot authors agree with this, but there's not many of them. Most of them are very much into the fortune-telling. I believe in the conscious use of tarot cards many times for becoming more awake and more conscious. For example, let's say something's bothering you and you just can't seem to figure out what is,